Hello, everybody. This is Greg Alexander, and welcome to the SBI podcast. Our guest today is Tiffany Nels, the Chief Marketing Officer for Lifesize. I'm excited to have Tiffany join the show because I know Tiffany as one of the top B2B revenue growth marketers. Tiffany played a major role in the successful demand generation efforts at SolarWinds and has the right blend of strategy and execution that B2B companies need for success. Many marketers have over-rotated to demand generation tactics without enough emphasis on brand. So Tiffany is going to make the case for why branding and demand generation are not parallel paths, but rather should be intertwined to give you the highest probability of making your number. This is a really fun show. Tiffany's a great guest, so stick around, and I hope you enjoy the show.
From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Greg Alexander.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number, but getting your peers to share with you how they are making theirs. Today we're going to demonstrate how to create an inspiring brand that tells your strategic story. So why this topic? Your competitors are making the same claims and promises as you. They are even using, at times, the same exact words. Brands that are built on who you are and what you do not result in above-average revenue growth. Your brand impacts revenue growth when it gets activated by the sales force and becomes uniquely relevant to your customers and prospects. If you haven't figured it out yet, this is Greg Alexander. I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm your host. And joining me in the studio is my co-host, Melissa Valdez. And she is here to point you to resources to advance you along the way of making your number. Melissa, welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Greg. I'm in Dallas, Texas, so I can say howdy, y'all, to our listeners.
You excited to talk to Tiffany today?
Very excited. My favorite topic.
Pretty cool topic, creating an inspiring brand story.
I'm excited.
All right. All right, and helping Melissa and I today with our demonstration is an executive who knows an awful lot about this topic. Her name is Tiffany Nels, and she is the Chief Marketing Officer for Lifesize. Tiffany, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Absolutely. And Melissa and Greg, thank you for having me. This is a topic I am extremely passionate about, so I am excited to share some of my thoughts and perspective. As you mentioned, I am CMO for Lifesize. I've been here for about 2 years and joined to help the company evolve their go-to-market model to align with a new business approach, which is an Internet of Things video collaboration solution, combines an application along with a conference room camera system, so one solution from one company. Came here to enable them to add on to the really strong channel go-to-market model they had with direct lead generation, as well as a direct brand storytelling motion. I think unlike other CMOs, I come from that brand discipline, so it was something I was excited to do.
All right, well, very good. Melissa, Tiffany and I are going to use our new 2018 workbook to guide our conversation. There's people that are listening and watching are going to want to follow along. Can you tell them how to get a copy?
Absolutely. We will be in the marketing strategy section. Brand strategy and planning on page 254. If you would like to download a copy, it will be available at sbi.tips/2018 workbook.
Okay, very good. All right, Tiffany, you are a B2B marketing leader with a proven track record of driving leads to the sales force through demand generation, and yet brand is important to you. So why is that? Was there a compelling event that drove the need to focus on brand at this moment?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, with my background in the brand, corporate marketing, and corporate communication space, the concept of storytelling has always been, in my mind, critical to the ability of a business to really attract net new customers as well as retain the customers that they have. I have 20 years of experience doing B2B tech marketing, but also had the opportunity to work on B2C projects in the telecommunications space. And that's where I learned this concept of creating a really emotional connection between your prospects and your customers and the company itself. It's not just about selling the product, it's about selling a story that convinces those folks that you are not only building a product to solve a situation, but you're building a company to support them and make them really successful. One of the people that has been really influential in how I have developed this philosophy is a gentleman named Lou Hoffman, who runs a boutique agency out of San Jose. And his core belief, and I completely agree with it, is that the art of storytelling is what enables brands to grow, to set themselves apart. And when you develop that discipline and integrate it from the top of the funnel all the way through your customer support, as well as knowledge from your product group, you create a really compelling, sticky experience.
You know, we've got a lot of tech marketers in our audience, and most of them, if not all of them, would tell you that brand is kind of fluffy, and it's all about leads, leads, leads. And they've over-rotated to demand gen to the point where, I think it's dysfunctional. So what would you say to those people who say, brand is this thing that's not measurable? I'm being measured by my impact on the pipeline. I don't have time for that. I'm pushing that to the side, and I'm just going to focus on demand gen.
Well, I think in our day and age, we understand that so many people are doing research and building a consideration set without talking to companies first. So if you're not spending time thinking about brand and how you capture attention, how you tell that story to get yourself into that consideration set, then you're missing the opportunity to really expand the aperture at the top of the funnel. People have to instantly connect and believe that you can solve their problem in a meaningful way before, quite frankly, they get to your website, before they engage with a trial, before they navigate and you drive strong conversion. So if you can connect that feeling and that emotion all the way through that experience, you have a stronger opportunity to capture their interest, hold their interest, and convert that interest. So if you're only focusing at the mid funnel, you're counting on these people to already understand you and appreciate you, which is a huge risk from a marketing perspective.
Yeah. I agree with you. In our work in this area, I advise my clients to answer the question, why change and why change now? Because many times in B2B, you've got to stimulate demand. You've got to compel somebody to take an action. And without a compelling, inspiring, strategic brand story, you're not going to push somebody into the market or trigger their action that you need them to take. So I couldn't agree with you more. For those that are in the audience.
Well, Greg,
yep, go ahead.
If you don't mind, just to expand on that, we're human beings. We have a drive to be successful. We have a drive to be recognized for what we do. And that results in in looking for companies and partners that can make you successful, that understand that appreciate and want to facilitate that. So it's really about just creating and fulfilling that human need to be successful and to be recognized for the great work and contribution that you make.
Yeah, I agree. And those emotional elements that you just mentioned there are components of this strategic story that we're talking about today. There's a lot of people that are listening that probably might be, less experienced than you are as it relates to branding and telling this inspiring strategic story. And they may want to start with a brand audit, but they might not know what that is. So let me ask you, have you done a brand audit recently? What's your opinion of brand audits? When should somebody do it? What does a brand audit typically reveal? Give us kind of the overview of the utility of a brand audit.
As you think about expanding your brand program and how you define your objectives around growing your brand and the story you tell, brand audits are critical. And I would recommend to anyone who is considering how they develop that brand story, how they focus and find differentiation in how they tell their story, they start with that brand audit. It's critical for you to understand not only how your customers view you and where they see the value, but what's the disconnected third-party view of what you know, and how deep does that knowledge go? How visible is your brand to begin with? That gives you that data baseline that will allow you to see over time how you're doing, increasing the perception of your brand, not only from a visibility perspective, but having people understand and value the things in your story. Brand is an evolution. So if you're not tracking the efficacy of that story, then just like mid-funnel demand gen programs, you don't know how to change them. You don't know how to find that sweet spot. We did one when I started here at Lifesize about 2 years ago to date, and we're about to embark on another one as we've invested and grown our story. I believe because brand has such a long tail in terms of results and getting depth and traction, about 18 to 24 months is the ideal time to do so. Okay,
very good. So let's use you and Lifesize now as kind of a use case for the audience. And I'm going to ask you about your audience of your brand, and what does the Lifesize brand do for your specific audience, and maybe how you came to that realization.
Sure. So our core audience is the IT professional. Because of our Internet of Things approach, the integration and the deployment of these devices, we believe, is critical to their success in managing and driving usage of the product to get the real value out of it for the business. So our brand promise to them has always been around, we understand the complexity and the chaos of your environment, the resource constraints that you have, and our objective is to make the deployment of this critical technology that is going to facilitate better business outcomes for your organization as easy as possible for you. And when we do that, we're going to make you the hero. We're going to help you earn an even stronger seat at the table in driving business outcomes, the growth and the expansion of your company's opportunities.
You know, what I love about the answer that you just gave me was how quickly you could answer it and how succinct it was, which tells me that you've given this a lot of thought and you've really crystallized your answer here. Sometimes I ask CMOs, especially in the tech industry, that same question, and it's, to be honest with you, filled with jargon, a bunch of gobbledygook that no one can really understand unless you're in the space. You talked about business outcomes. You talked about improving the lives of the user, the IT professional. You know, they were very, for somebody like myself who doesn't live in your industry, I could understand it. So how did you get to that point? What advice would you give to those that are listening that want to be able to answer that question as well as you just did? How did you get there?
It starts with just knowing and understanding your audience. And that means not just looking at them on paper, but actually talking to them, getting to know them, whether it's focus groups or, in our case, I sent my marketing team down to talk to the IT folks we have here. We have an embedded focus group that we can leverage and test messaging at every time. So there's that professional level understanding, but to get that real crisp emotional connection, you also have to understand some of the subculture that lies behind these professionals. So IT pros are extremely leery of sales and marketing approaches. They don't believe what we say. They don't like the fluff, as you mentioned earlier. So a really good way to connect with them is show them, we get your job, we get all the pressure on you, but we also understand what goes on in the background, right? This is a group that typically is into technology and geeky stuff. And so we try to imbue all of our marketing with a little bit of that undercurrent, right? Have a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek approach to how we talk to them. So that could include a campaign we recently did around New Year's resolutions to help them control this conferencing chaos. It was a generator, and what it allowed you to do is put your name in, and then it spit out resolutions that were really tied to how they operate, right? Like, I resolve to be less binary or not. Right? I reserve to complete the transition to IPv6, which is something that for a lot of IT pros was a priority, but not necessarily something they found the time or the resources to execute. Another one to kind of tap into that sci-fi culture was I resolve to give Kirk a chance. So it's as much a part of understanding what their workday looks like, as well as the emotional things that drive just their overall interest in joie de vivre, right? So that's really important to us. It's about finding those connections and then being able to leverage that to show we can speak in their language. Then you just get it really crisp and start building stuff around that. But you've got to count on some natural language approach and some emotional way to communicate that. Otherwise, it's just, to your point, it's disconnected fluff.
Yeah, very good. All right, this is probably a good time for us to take a break. Melissa, Tiffany was sharing with us a lot of what we would call emerging best practice for our audience. And we've developed a tool that would allow somebody to benchmark themselves against emerging best practices like the ones that she just discussed, which produces an output that says, here's maybe where you're doing well, here's maybe where you're in line, and here's maybe where your opportunities are for improvement. Can you tell the audience how to get this tool?
I think you just stole my thunder, Greg.
Hopefully it won't be the last time.
No, you can find it at sbi.tips/2018 workbook. You'll have 3 options there. First, you'll see the revenue diagnostic tool, which we highly recommend you try that first and kind of get that roadmap that you were talking about, Greg. You will also be able to download the workbook on Kindle, or if you want to order a good old-fashioned hard copy, which I like to take notes and write in the book, you can do that there as well. But first step is to take that tool and get that roadmap.
Yeah. What I love about it is that, so if marketers are listening right now, because Tiffany's our guest, SBI has a marketing strategy methodology. It's got like 20 phases to it. And you can self-assess yourself against this methodology, and you answer 2 questions. The first is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how well are you doing at this? And on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is this to you? And obviously the things that you would rate a 5 on level of importance that you might rate a 1 or a 2 or maybe a 3 on how well you're doing at it, those are the priority items that you should focus on. So by going through this exercise, you'll get that type of roadmap, and we'll give you a kind of help you pinpoint the things you need to focus on and prioritize right now. So that URL again is sbi.tips/2018 workbook, and I encourage everybody to check that out. All right, let's come back to Tiffany here and jump back into the questions. So tell me a little bit about Lifesize's brand promise, and do you offer a brand promise guarantee?
There's a couple of ways we do that. So at the very top, the vision is we connect people to make their workplace great. The drop down underneath that and the brand promise that we make to our core audience is that you are deeply responsible for making your workplace great for these end users, for facilitating that collaboration that is so critical to your business's ability to grow and to move quickly. Take that seat at the table. Deliver a technology that is high quality, really easy to use for your individual users, that recognizes the importance of a number of different meeting styles, whether it be via mobile device, laptops, within the conference room, and then just make it super easy for you to manage, to help you manage the chaos. So again, you sit at that table, you command the recognition, the respect that IT organizations deserve in facilitating the success for the business.
Yep.
So it's, our differentiation there is we think about you as we craft this whole solution because we recognize that your professional reputation rests on the quality of the technology that you pick and recommend for the business. And, I'll use a parallel from consumer. If I, for example, feel really passionately about a laundry detergent and I recommend it to someone, at the end of the day, I don't really care if you think I'm good at laundry. So there's very little skin in the game for me to recommend a detergent. Yeah. But as a professional, my core need from a social perspective is for you to recognize my expertise and my strength in what I do. So I'm going to be really thoughtful about what I recommend. And we want people to have confidence in that. Yeah. So to answer the second part of your question, that requires the brand promise to be crisp, but to be carried through the entire life cycle of that customer. So there are guarantees that we make both on the soft side and on the hard side to deliver that confidence and maintain that emotional connection. There is, as I mentioned before, just the marketing messaging. Are we speaking their language? From a sales perspective, are we emoting that we are looking for a partnership with you, not just cash from you. We want to listen to the problems that you are solving and show you how we can solve and support you uniquely, that we put thought into it and we recognize we have options in which to serve you best. As we do the trade-off to customer success, it's about carrying that understanding forward and being responsive, being committed. So in terms of how we support that, there are SLAs that we provide around our extreme support service, around the service itself, to reinforce that commitment we've made to them. We also then have a community, and the community serves two purposes for us. One, it's a great way for our customers to be able to self-serve and see how other folks are using it, but it also allows us to capture feature requests, ideas for how we expand and improve our product, so we can show that we've heard our customers, that we have incorporated some of their recommendations and their feedback in terms of how we evolve our product roadmap. That allows us to build an even better product, and here we go. We hit that virtuous circle, which allows us to expand and reinforce the brand message we have there, not just through our words, but through the words of our customers. That incredibly powerful and to a certain extent uncontrollable word of mouth. So the control you put around it is delivering on that expectation you set initially and continuing to maintain that emotional engagement with your customers.
Yep. So I bring up this concept of a brand promise guarantee, and for the benefit of the audience here, Tiffany, you'll know this, but in a B2B context, the battle is to reduce the fear of buying. Because when you're making a purchase decision, you're putting your name next to that. You might have some career exposure if things don't go well, et cetera. So the whole idea of having a brand promise that you can articulate and backing that promise up with a guarantee reduces the fear of buying, which is a key element when you're selling a complex item in B2B sales. Let me tell you a story about Lifesize. So we're doing a video interview right now, and SBI prides itself on having high production quality, and we're in a studio that we spent a couple $1 million on building, and we've got a whole production staff, et cetera. And we use another provider when we do this type of video interview, but we were having Tiffany on today, so she rightfully said, hey, I'd like you to use our product, and we said, okay. So her brand promise was easy to use. We got the thing stood up in like a minute. The video quality is super high. We're not having any delays whatsoever. The audio quality is super high. My technicians that are back in the control room were freaking out about it because it's a new technology, and yet they plugged it in. They're like, holy cow, that was a lot easier than the other ones, right? So if you're going to make a brand promise, you got to be able to stand behind it. And that customer experience is the first time I've used the product. Has to back it up. Otherwise, it's just noise. It's just words. And especially if you sell into IT, as Tiffany is, they're skeptical of these sales promises because vendors tell you, buy my product and all your problems are going to go away and we're going to solve world hunger, right? It doesn't happen that way. So the brand promise has to come through, and the Lifesize brand promise certainly has resonated with me, and we're going to discuss how we might use this technology for all of our video conferencing going forward. So think about, audience members, what your brand promise is.
And I'll add to that. I think one of the potentially mistakes or really missteps that marketing organizations make with respect to telling the brand story is the attempt to get too pie in the sky, to promise too much in order to capture that attention. And when marketing leans way too far over those skis, when they try and make a brand promise that seems so enormous that why wouldn't you check it out? To your point, if the business can't deliver against that, that's actually worse than taking a more conservative approach and growing it over time as your brand expands. So you want to be emotive, but you certainly don't want to create the impression that you can deliver something that you know you can't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, very well said. Our work focuses on brand activation primarily. I mean, we're working with sales teams to drive revenue up, and our brand promise is make your number, and the sales audience very clearly knows what that is. That's slang, that's terminology that taps into our subculture. Brand activation in B2B very often happens through the sales force. I mean, literally, I'm on a sales call, and the words that come out of my mouth is a branding moment. And I encourage the CMOs that we work with when they're trying to activate the brand to try to understand the 360-degree picture of where the brand lives and acts. So my question to you, Tiffany, is that what advice would you give somebody when they're trying to understand really this brand is a living thing and it's behaving and engaging and acting with market participants? How can somebody understand this 360-degree picture of their brand?
So I like to use an analogy that I think some people find entertaining, so I'm going to give it a try. And that's that this engagement is essentially like dating, creating a dating relationship with your prospect. So brand and marketing's objective is to, whether it's, at a bar, whether it's through a dating site, start a conversation that engages this person and gets them to believe that you have enough in common, that you have the same perspective that they do, so that they are interested and they want to give you that phone number so you can set up the date, which is really the pass off to sales. So the continuity of that message, to your point about 360, has to carry through that next conversation. You can't go into the first date and be a totally different person with totally different words. You've got to continue that conversation and give examples of how you fulfill that impression to get them to become engaged with you and decide that they're ready to pursue that committed long-term relationship. But then if you don't follow through on that story as who you are as a person and how you interact with them and how you develop that relationship, divorce, which we would call churn, which is horrible for a business, right? You want to hit that 75-year anniversary. You want to have that kind of relationship where you guys are best friends. So that's how you get that 360 view of you connecting the story to how you actually live it out in practice. I would guess that a number of us have experience on how that works. Just think about that. That's the easiest way to understand why that connectivity is important. And from a tactical perspective, that means it's the responsibility of marketing to not only communicate and show sales and customer success how we're communicating and what's working in the marketplace from an attraction perspective, but also to listen to their feedback about where along their process in the relationship it's fallen down a little bit, right? It's not easy for us to continue to articulate so that we can then make adjustments as we go out and continue to have conversations.
Yeah. All right, very good. Well, the brand promise of our show, one of them is to keep this to 30 minutes. So in the spirit of time, I'm going to move on a little bit. So, Melissa, some of the people that are listening to this, they're going to want to implement these ideas that Tiffany's talking about. They're going to need some help. How might SBI help them out with this?
SBI can definitely help. We have our team of experts on hand ready to help you. If you'd like to schedule an interactive workshop, for example, we would love to get our subject matter experts engaged with you on this topic and other topics of concern.
Okay, very good. And if they wanted to sign up for something like that, well, just fill out the contact us form or go back to the workbook page?
So if you do that, you'll go back to the workbook page. Again, it's sbi.tips/2018 workbook. If you fill out the diagnostic tool or you download a copy of the workbook, any of those options that we gave you earlier, it will alert us and we'll connect with you and see if you want to schedule a workshop.
Okay, great. All right, so let's come back to Tiffany here. My next question is, when I introduced our topic today, which is telling our strategic, inspiring brand story, I discussed that, you go on the internet today and you look at vendors within a certain segment or an industry, and they all sound alike. I mean, they're all making the same promises, using the same words. And we have to break out of that and come up with our own kind of inspiring story. And at the center of that is kind of the big creative idea, or what we might call the core opportunity for brand relevance, that really differentiates us over the competition. So Tiffany, what is your core opportunity for brand relevance, and how do you differentiate your strategic story?
So I think one of the core aspects is, again, going back to deeply understanding your persona and what drives both their frustration as well as their feelings of success. So one of the aspects of our product that allows us to reinforce that and differentiate is it's known conference rooms are still the key area where meetings take place. So an IT professional in delivering this solution is going to want a way to seamlessly and easily connect the conference room experience to the applications or mobile or distant participants, guests, whoever it may be. So the differentiating piece of it is we're going to make your life easy because we offer one complete solution. So that product experience reinforces the brand experience. It reflects the fact that we understand the things that they need to be able to do in order to be successful with this technology, but also balance that investment across all the other systems and applications they have to manage within their environment. There are really no other competitors that combine these two things in such an easy way that it's important for us to show that. Mm-hmm. The other element is just the creation of those creative campaigns that allow us to show that. So as an example, one of the things we like to do with our case studies is to actually use our technology like we are here to showcase the features. So we've made it really easy to connect with this customer who's remote. We're recording the actual session, and then we're going to give you the link within our recording and sharing environment so you can see how that product works in action, and you can experience the easy environment and the easy delivery of value that your users will experience.
Yep.
Using their natural language is another big piece of that.
You know, when I asked you to introduce yourself and the company, you mentioned Internet of Things, which I wasn't expecting. When I think of what your company does, what your product does, and I think about the category you're in, shame on me, I didn't make the leap to IoT. So tell me a little bit about how you're positioning that.
Well, I think consumers will understand. I'm wearing a Fitbit Blaze today. This is a great piece of hardware, but the value really comes in the connection to the application on the web or mobile. Same with Nest. If you don't have that application, nice piece of hardware, but not really differentiated from the rest of the space. And that's really what we do from a B2B perspective. By combining this industry-leading hardware with a really great application, we give you more value. There's that native connection that makes both pieces of it way more valuable. And I think, again, to making that emotional connection, to using natural language and experience that people are comfortable with and knowledgeable about, they understand that value. They can make the connection. And that's not just the IT pro, but that's the ability to sell to the business owner, to empower your prospect to make the case on your behalf. So that's why we really started thinking about ourselves as an Internet of Things company, not just a SaaS company. This hardware is critical to our differentiation. We need to put it into a category that people understand and that is different from our competitors.
Yeah. Melissa, let me ask you a question. What's more interesting to you, Internet of Things or conference room technology?
Internet of Things.
Right. So this is a great example of what I mean about the core opportunity for brand relevance, right? I mean, Internet of Things is a lot more interesting than conference room technology, and I'm not taking a shot at the conference room people, it's a fact. So what Tiffany was able to do, and it's true, I mean, she just shared the example with us on how they really are an Internet of Things company. And through her example with her watch and us demonstrating the product right now, we can see how that is true. And if you're in charge of creating this inspiring story for your brand, you know, picking your head up and paying attention to, you know, what's interesting out there today and connecting your story to it is an effective way to do that. And that was a great example of that. All right, I got one more question for you, and it's a doozy. It's a multi-part question, so I'm going to go slow.
All right, I'm ready.
Yeah. And this one here is probably the most important question for our particular niche audience, and that is, how is the entire company, from the sales force to customer success to engineering, living the brand in every interaction that they have with customers, prospects, and partners?
It's a great question. So I mentioned earlier our vision statement, connecting people to make the workplace great. Well, underneath that, we have core values, and one of them is to act with customer obsession, to do everything we do every day, thinking about how we put that customer first, whether you are customer facing, like sales and customer success, or one of the organizations facilitating and supporting their ability to do their job well. Well, there's 3 other core values that connect, complement, even lift up that value. It's acting with integrity every day, making every day matter, relentless innovation, All of these things, regardless of organization, contribute to the ability to deliver on a brand promise that is customer oriented. Make every day matter. Something happens, get on that immediately and solve that problem. From a marketing perspective, if you see a message or an element of the brand story not connecting through your campaigns, kill it. It's time to reevaluate it. There's a better way to articulate it. That's what we need to do every day to make sure we're getting the most out of the effort of that story. Ties to innovation. And as I mentioned earlier, you never want to make a brand promise that you can't deliver on. That's that really authenticity and integrity point.
Yep. So for the sales audience out there, if you're asking yourself right now, should I really care about this? And the answer is yes. Brand activation is essential to your success. It's essential to you making your number. And here's why. Your customer is going to have, or your prospect is going to have, multiple touch points along their journey in making a buying decision. Some are going to be in marketing. Some are going to be in sales. Some's going to be with pre-sales engineering. Some might be with engineering. Development, product development. And so on and so on. Some might be with your current customers. Some might be with your community. I mean, the touch points are almost endless. And if the brand is inconsistently communicated, they're going to get confused. And a confused customer doesn't buy. When the brand story is the same, no matter where they interact with it, then they gain confidence in who you are, what you do, and how you can help them. They're not confused. And as their confidence goes up, their fear of buying goes down. So you as a salesperson plays a critical role here. When you engage with a prospect in a sales cycle, every interaction matters. Every interaction is confirming or disproving the brand promise that was made at some other point on the journey. So pay real strong attention to brand activation, how critical it is as a sales team to make sure that that brand impression remains positive, because that's what will result in a victory for you. All right, Tiffany, unfortunately, we are out of time, but on behalf of our audience, I wanted to thank you for coming on the show, contributing to our body of knowledge, and I got a lot out of the show. You are a rock star, and it was great having you on the show. And
thank you.
Yeah, it really was fantastic. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. As I mentioned, it's a topic I'm really excited about, and hopefully people got some valuable information and perspective from it.
Yeah, we certainly did. All right, and I want to thank the SB audience for tuning in. Our numbers are great. Our shows are doing fantastic, and because of that, and because of the audience, we're able to attract fantastic guests that want to come speak to you like we had today. So I appreciate you tuning in. Keep telling everybody you know about the show, and keep listening. We'll do our best to return the favor by having great guests. Melissa, before we jump for today, I wanted you to tell the audience how to create an account and customize your experience with us.
Sure, absolutely. And if you want to register for an account, my SBI account, you'll go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. There you will create your My SBI account, and you can select the topics of interest to you and when you would like to receive your content.
Yeah. So I encourage you to do that. We produce a lot of content. We publish 2 pieces of content every day, 7 days a week, and have been doing that for 10 years. So it can get a little overwhelming. So come to the site, create an account, create what I call the logged in experience. Tell us how often you want it and what you want, and we'll make sure that we do our best to deliver that to you. All right, that's it for today. As always, until next time, team, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.